Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Spectator Sports. We have a loaded episode for you guys today, but before we get into it, please do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, take a look at our Instagram and TikTok pages, and for my Spotify listeners, if you could give us a 5-star review, that would be a massive favor on those platforms. So all links are in the description. So the NFL draft was last week, and man, it was wild from start to finish. I want to talk about major draft picks, especially in the first round, give some takes on that, and then break down some of the later rounds as well. To start, we have the QBs going 1 and 2. Bryce Young is going to the Carolina Panthers. They traded up with the Chicago Bears last month to make this move a franchise-altering move. A lot of people had questions about his height and if his body can translate to the NFL level. I think he'll be fine. The Carolina Panthers have worked on building the offensive line the last couple of years. You remember Ike Ekwonu last year in the 2022 draft. I think he's been pretty solid. He still needs to develop a little bit more, but still a very good offensive tackle prospect. And now they have their franchise quarterback who we think will lead them back to where they used to be with those Cam Newton days. So very good pickup for the Carolina Panthers. They will be competing in this NFC South divisions for years to come. And then right after Bryce, we saw CJ Stroud. There was a lot of rumors before draft day that the Houston Texans were not going to take a QB. At 2, they were probably going to take Will Anderson Jr. or maybe another defensive prospect, and maybe utilize that second pick that they had at number 12 for that quarterback, whether it be Anthony Richardson or Will Levis. But they decided to go with CJ Stroud at number 2, but then they still had that 12th overall pick, and they made a trade with the Arizona Cardinals to get Will Anderson Jr. And I thought this double dipping was very cool, very nice move by their GM. And now you have the second best quarterback prospect that many people had on their boards, and then the best edge rusher in the entire draft. You figure out the signal caller, you figure out the defensive side, and you still get to surround first-year head coach D'Amico Ryans with a ton of talent to start. And I mean, these are good moves for the Houston Texans. Now they get the new quarterback who they've really needed since letting go of their quarterback a couple years ago in that trade with the Cleveland Browns, and basically resetting the entire outlook on the roster for the foreseeable future. So this is a great move for the Houston Texans. I think they're going to make some moves later on in the years to come to build around CJ Stroud and Will Anderson Jr. At number 4, the Colts didn't have to make moves. We were worried that at 4 that they might lose out on their prospects that they wanted, which was Anthony Richardson. Thankfully, they took the gamble. They stayed where they were. Nobody leapfrogged them, and they decided to get Anthony Richardson. And that, I think, is a really good pick. He's going to be a project guy. He has a lot of raw talent, but there is something there. I mean, he showcased it in the combine, became a combine star, really passed Will Levis to be the 3rd overall quarterback prospect. And yes, he has the cannon, but he also has that dual threat capability as well that we really like to see out of quarterbacks these days. For the Colts, this is a great move. I mean, we tried to see them do this whole reload the roster with these veteran quarterbacks from Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz. Ever since Andrew Luck retired, they've been trying to do this revolving door of like quarterbacks who are veterans who have some experience because they have this really good offensive line. Now, last year, with this whole debacle that was Jeff Saturday's tenure as interim head coach, no offense to Jeff Saturday, I think he's a great analyst and a great NFL center, but in terms of a head coach, the locker room kind of fell apart. The season fell off very early, and we saw that, and now they get to reset now with Anthony Richardson. You still have this offensive line who hopefully will be better than last season. They were pretty bad, but they still have Quentin Nelson, so that's a huge plus right there. And Jonathan Taylor will be a lot healthier going into 2023 than he was in 2022. So at the 5th overall pick, this is Seattle's first of 2 first-round picks. Remember last year in the Russell Wilson trade, they got Denver's first-round pick in this season, and Denver had a horrid season, as we know, so they landed the 5th overall pick to Seattle, and this means that Seattle has a great opportunity to make a franchise-altering move. Now, they already extended Geno. A lot of people wanted them to take a quarterback, like, at this point, but at 5, the way the dominoes have fallen on draft night, all that's left is Will Levis. I don't think that's worth the 5th overall pick. I'm glad Seattle decided to go with the best secondary prospect in the draft, and that is Devin Witherspoon. He is pretty good. He is a guy that's coming out of Illinois was a standout cover corner, and now pairing him with Tyreek Woolen, and this in terms of the whole secondary is a great find for them. I mean, now they have both sides that they can lock up. They have Kobe Bryant, not this Kobe Bryant, but Kobe Bryant with a C out of Cincinnati last year. Also a very good find for Seattle. So I think their secondary is kind of rounding into form. And remember, they're pairing these cornerbacks with the safety duo of Quandre Diggs, and then hopefully the healthy return of Jamal Adams. When he was healthy, he's a pretty good box safety. I'm not saying he's the reincarnation of Cam Chancellor, no. But very effective nonetheless. So Seattle's making some moves, and this is one of their really good moves in what I think it was a phenomenal draft by the Seattle Seahawks. So at 8, this is where the Falcons came in, and surprisingly they decided to go with Bijan Robinson out of Texas. He is the best running back in this draft. Really a game changer. I thought the Eagles would consider him at number 10, maybe even if they were to trade back, they would take him then, but he went pretty early to the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I think this is a move to get Desmond Ridder some extra weapons. Now he has Kyle Pitts. He got Drake London last season, and now adding Bijan Robinson. Basically all the skill positions are accounted for. So the Falcons have some nice weapons for Desmond Ridder. I'm not saying they're going to do anything substantial this season, but he does have some adequate help. Obviously got to shore up that offensive line, but at least the skill positions, he has someone good to pass to. So we'll see what happens in Atlanta moving forward and the development of Desmond Ridder. And then we get to 9, and I'm thinking, okay, the Chicago Bears on the clock, and this was a team that you thought if they trade back and they still get Jalen Carter, this would have been pretty much a win-win, but they traded back to the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Eagles only had to give up another 4th round pick, and I thought, okay, what are they going to do? And it seemed like they wouldn't let Jalen Carter out of their grasp, so they moved up one spot, only costing them an extra 4th rounder this year, and they picked up Jalen Carter. And I know he comes with offseason baggage and very tragic situation that happened earlier this offseason. Didn't have a good pro day either. He has some character issues to work on, but the Eagles have built a very healthy culture. I think Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, and additionally the Eagles veterans like Fletcher Cox, Jason Kelsey, BG, and Lane Johnson, those are the core 4. Those guys have been there through thick or thin, and I think that's a very healthy culture for a young guy to walk into. And this is just the start of what the Eagles were going to get started with, which we'll break down a little bit later. But awesome move by the Eagles. I mean, this is another great interior defensive lineman that basically that they're able to replace in Javon Hargrave, who they lost in free agency this year. They're going to get him on the cheap for 5 years, and I think as long as he stays out of trouble off the field and that he comes in to camp healthy and ready to go, I think they have a game changer who can wreck a lot of games for the Eagles. So now with the Bears, they took the Eagles pick at 10. They decided to go with Darnell White out of Tennessee. I thought that was another good prospect there. I wasn't a big fan of Skoronski. The big thing about Skoronski is the arms, and I think he is a solid offensive lineman prospect, but I think he has to be more of a guard rather than a tackle, because those T-Rex arms that he's been getting roasted on throughout this entire pre-draft experience has been pretty bad. So he would get beaten around the edge by these elite pass rushers that we see in the NFL. And good pickup by taking Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. Like I said before, it's a really good way to build the offensive line, protect Justin Fields' blind side, or wherever they're going to put him in, either it's right or left tackle, because last year we saw Justin Fields wasn't really running by design, it was just really running by necessity or to preserve his life. So definitely going to help there. It's going to probably reduce the number of hits Justin Fields has to take and hopefully build on the forward development that we're seeing out of Justin Fields. I was really surprised by the fall of Christian Gonzalez. Now, Gonzalez I thought was arguably the second cornerback prospect in this draft. He is long, he has great wingspan, he comes out of Oregon, transferred from Utah, but still an Oregon prospect, so you know he has some pretty good speed. That's their calling card in the Pac-12. The Washington Commanders decided to go with Emmanuel Forbes. Now, Forbes there's a lot of traits that people are saying have similar traits or game to Sauce Gardner. The problem is with Emmanuel Forbes, he's a measly 166 pounds. That's a toothpick. He's going into a division with CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Smith, and AJ freaking Brown, a behemoth of a man. I just saw a picture of him back in his Ole Miss days with DK Metcalf, and I know DK is a large man, but AJ is also fairly large too, and the weight disparity there is at least 40-50 pounds. Pretty scary. Obviously he has to put on a ton of weight to be an adequate corner, because corners, as much as they don't like to tackle, they still have to make a tackle, especially on wide receivers, even tight ends, even running backs. I think that's something they're going to have to work on in their development now. Hopefully that's something that they do, because otherwise he's going into division with a lot of talented receivers at their disposal. But going back to Christian Gonzalez, I thought, okay, where is he going to go? And he goes at the next pick at 17 to the New England Patriots. I thought this is another nice move. I mean, Bill Belichick is obviously a defensive guru. He has definitely lost a little bit of that defensive play calling, and maybe it's just due to the surrounding talent. They have some good pieces, but definitely have not been the same unit as they were maybe a year or two ago. And him getting another cornerback, because they lost J.C. Jackson, and I think we saw that J.C. Jackson's maybe more of a product of the Bill Belichick defense, because when he was over in LA Chargers, it wasn't quite the same production. He was getting burnt and biting on a lot of moves. Now we're going to see Christian Gonzalez go into a really good program. I mean, Bill Belichick's son is the defensive backs head coach after all. So that's a great pickup there for the New England Patriots. They're getting a long, rangy cornerback to assist in the secondary there, because they have a lot of receivers they have to guard out there. There's Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, they have Stephon Diggs, and it's just going to be a pretty crazy list right there. So they definitely made a good move trying to at least stop the bleeding and shore up the secondary. At pick number 20, this was a weird stretch in the draft where we saw 4 consecutive picks where wide receivers were taken. We saw the Seahawks take Jackson Smith Njigba out of Ohio State. Really good prospect there. I mean, now they have Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and Jackson Smith Njigba. I think that is a great trio right there. They are loading up, and this is just pick 2 of a very phenomenal draft for the Seattle Seahawks. I think they're big winners in this 2023 draft. And then after that, the Chargers got Quinton, and then we saw Zay Flowers to the Baltimore Ravens, and then Jordan Addison, who went to the Minnesota Vikings at 24th overall. Weird trend there. I mean, I haven't really seen that in recent drafts, but kind of cool to notice. And then in the later part of the draft, we saw the Buffalo Bills leapfrog the Dallas Cowboys to take arguably the best tight end prospect in this draft, that is Kincaid, and he's going to be really good, because after Dawson Knox, he's not quite the same guy as he used to be, and not even an elite tight end to begin with. They needed other pieces outside of Stephon Diggs to help out Josh Allen. So I think Kincaid will be a difference maker for that Buffalo Bills offense. And as a result of this move, the Dallas Cowboys went with Mazi Smith, and a good defensive tackle prospect. I think, again, interior defensive line play is going to be stressed for years to come, getting that pressure up the middle or plugging up blocks between the center and the guards. Very important in the NFL these days. So just felt like they were settling. I would think maybe if there was anything else you could trade back, maybe get him in the early second round, but that's a move that Jerry Jones wants to live and die with. So we'll see what happens, how he pans out. And then to go to the very last couple of picks, this is the Eagles' true first round pick. This is their own pick at number 30. I mean, many people picked Nolan Smith to go at number 10, which was originally, or the first slot that the Eagles had in this NFL draft. And to get him at number 30, phenomenal value. I mean, the first 2 picks so far have been guys that you thought would be long gone at their current positions, but where they got them from is great value. So great job to Howie Roseman. Now they got another Georgia Bulldog in this draft that makes currently 4 at this point, and they're only getting started with Georgia Bulldogs, because we're going to see a lot more come through for the Eagles in this draft. To talk about the surprising fall of Will Levis. Now, many people thought he was probably the 3rd prospect in this, and then Anthony Richardson kind of exploded on the scene, especially in the combine. It kind of left Will Levis without a chair at the table, and continuing the slide, I thought maybe the Bucks might take him, because Yeah, they have Baker Mayfield, but maybe they want to get a young quarterback there. They just didn't decide to go with him. I don't know if it's maturity issues. I mean, there are guys like Colin Cowherd saying that he uploaded a bathroom selfie. Maybe it's a little bit immature. Yeah, I think that might be a little bit immature, but is it going to cost somebody draft stock? I don't think so. I think it just goes back to the tape. His mechanics are a little bit wonky, but also just the decision making. He had a lot of strange interceptions that didn't come off of pressure in college, so that's something to be concerned about. Maybe that's why he dropped. Nonetheless, the Titans went up and grabbed him early on day 2, and he's a Tennessee Titan now. Now, the Titans have a pretty decent logjam at quarterback. They still have Ryan Tannehill. Now, last year in the 3rd round, they took Malik Willis. He didn't really pan out the way I think many people wanted him to, so now Will Levis is entering the season as the 3rd quarterback. I think based on how Malik Willis looked, it looked pretty bad. I mean, he was more like a spread option quarterback, but didn't really look confident throwing the ball. Now, I think another offseason is going to do wonders for him, but as right now as a passer, I think we got to go with Will Levis right now just based on what we've seen recently, but it's an open competition. Obviously, Ryan Tannehill should be the starter as long as he's healthy, but that backup spot for number 2 is very much wide open, and it could be the difference between who is going to be the future of the Tennessee Titans for years to come. And I think right now, given that they invested and moved up in the 2nd round, they're going to lean based off of that in Will Levis. And I think it's just bad circumstances for Malik Willis as he's fallen out of favor for many people on that Tennessee Titans staff. And then by day 3, draft's kind of winding down. A lot of picks, if you have 4 rounds to get through, the day starts a little bit earlier. It's at 12 p.m. on Saturday. The Eagles aren't picking until the 7th round. I have it in the background, not really the main focus of my Saturday, but early enough, Howie Roseman makes another move. He trades up and snags Keely Ringo out of Georgia. So that is the 3rd Bulldog in this draft, the 5th in the last 2 years. And there are many things going around now on NFL Twitter and whatnot about how the Eagles have become the Phila Bulldogs or the Georgia North, whatever the case may be. It's just really, really funny. I think it's finally happening that the Eagles are looking into SEC products because for whatever reason before, and this is still when Howie Roseman was their GM with the Philadelphia Eagles, they just didn't look too much at the Southeastern Conference. It was really weird. I like some Alabama products. I like Georgia. I think Georgia has now surpassed Alabama in terms of being the class of the SEC. I mean, they're back-to-back champions. They have a ton of defensive prospects. The Eagles now understandably like them, but even that, they dipped into some Alabama products. I mean, Jalen Hurts is an Alabama product, Devontae Smith, Landon Dickerson, all out of Alabama. I mean, they are dipping into this SEC sort of pool, and then factor in A.J. Brown. Now, he wasn't drafted by the Eagles, but still an Ole Miss SEC product. The good thing is they're noticing that. They know that it's the superior conference in college football. And now it's just really interesting to see that they're making all these moves because they weren't done just yet because they added on DeAndre Swift. Now, he is a back that fell out of favor with the Detroit Lions. He came into the league out of Georgia, so that's a 6th Bulldog added in. But DeAndre Swift was drafted by the Detroit Lions 3 years ago. He was sharing the backfield, and then Jamal Williams kind of surpassed him as the lead back the last couple of years. And I mean, for many people in fantasy, know that Jamal Williams get those goal line touchdowns, but he became more of just a goal line runner. He was a guy that ran between the tackles and was actually the bell cow back or the lead back for the Detroit backfield. For whatever reason, DeAndre Swift still has a lot of talent. Now, yeah, he's been banged up and he's not quite a replacement for Miles Sanders. I think the Eagles are doing a smart approach where they're not investing a ton of dollars into running backs because they know that it's a very replaceable position in the NFL because they have right now Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, and then they signed Rashad Penny early in the offseason, and now to add in DeAndre Swift, who can do a little bit of everything, catch, he can run. So I think that's a good pickup. I think Detroit also is the beneficiary of that. It's just really a win-win for both sides, but just adding on another Bulldog was just really interesting to see. So I wanted to talk about some winners from the NFL draft. Talk about the Detroit Lions. Now, trading back was some interesting moves there, but then picking up Jahmyr Gibbs was a head-scratching move for me, but their second-round pick was Brian Branch, and I thought he was a first-round graded safety. He dropped to the second round to get him there. Is great value there. And then they went with Hooker, who is a quarterback prospect who many thought would be a first-round prospect, but unfortunately he tore his ACL in his last year in college, so obviously damaged his draft stock there. ACL injuries have been tricky in the past, but a lot of players have been recovering a lot quicker and better. So it's not really the same game-changing injury that we've seen in the past. Hopefully, Hooker returns to that similar form that he was in college. But there's also no pressure because they still have Jared Goff at the helm. So I think Goff is going to still be the quarterback this season, and then he's not due any guaranteed money in 2024. I think then the Detroit Lions can part ways and maybe give the keys to the offense to Hendon Hooker. So we'll see what happens with Hooker. I think that's a good move for them. They didn't have to do a lot. I thought maybe at 6 they would go with somebody, but all the quarterback prospects pretty much dried up early. So Detroit made the best of what they needed to do. They didn't have to give up a ton to get a quarterback of the future. I think that's another winner of this NFL draft. So my winners of the draft, I mean, clearly the Eagles have won the NFL draft. I mean, what they were able to do, Jalen Carter at 9, arguably at one point the top overall prospect of this NFL draft. I think they have the great culture to help him out and grow as a person despite the off-field stuff that happened earlier this season. Still a very productive player. And then to add in Nolan Smith at 30 when he was supposed to be maybe a top 15 pick. Add in Sidney Brown out of Illinois in the 3rd round, getting that safety depth. Adding in interior O-line depth as well. And then getting Keely Ringo in the 4th round when he was graded to be a 2nd round prospect. Howie Roseman has been killing the draft. And in the last 2-3 drafts, that's something that I really like to see, is that they're drafting SEC players. Jalen Hurts, SEC player out of Bama. Devontae Smith, wide receiver, Heisman winner out of Alabama. Landon Dickerson, who's become a Pro Bowler this year, was out of Alabama. And then adding on all these SEC products, I mean, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, and now Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Keely Ringo. That is guys that are part of the historic 2021 defense, and then they have other guys from the 2022 Georgia Bulldog national championship team. The fact that they're adding in all these SEC players are definitely the best conference in college football, and Howie Roseman didn't really do that in the past. He was kind of all over the place, but now he really understands that the best conference is the SEC. I'm happy he's recognizing that, making some good picks, and we'll see what happens. But the Eagles now also adding in DeAndre Swift, who I don't think is going to be a huge game changer, but it's a great cheap move for a guy who's unproven, and he's hungry for that contract because he's also coming home. He has roots in Philadelphia. I talked earlier about how the Eagles should be the class of the NFC. They have a lot of advantages in many positions that their rivals just don't. The biggest threat, I think, is the San Francisco 49ers. Conference itself is just a huge drop-off in talent. The Eagles still have depth at many key positions. They've retooled. They have gotten younger as well. They've kept several pieces of free agents that we thought would walk, but they actually were able to keep. So a lot of that Super Bowl team is back, and I think they're very hungry to finish the deal this year. So I really would be expecting the Eagles to go Super Bowl or bust this season. So on Sunday, we saw Game 7 between the Kings and the Warriors, and I mean, the series just keeps on evolving. From last Sunday, we saw Game 4 when the series was tied at 2 apiece. The Warriors were able to go into Sacramento, steal Game 5, and I thought it was pretty much over for the Kings. They didn't seem to really have it at home, and then I don't know how they would summon the energy to steal a game back in Golden State, something they haven't done in the series. Nonetheless, they do so. They honestly beat the brakes off of Golden State in Game 6. Huge missed opportunity, and then I thought maybe the pendulum swings the other way because the Warriors have been pretty god-awful on the road this season. But in Game 7, all the chips are in the center of the table. Who shows up? That guy Stephen Curry. I mean, he's a bad man. He is a generational talent. I think other than LeBron, he's been the most game-changing, most impactful player. And just to talk about how he did so in this game, in the first half, it was pretty much nip and tuck, but the Kings were in control. They had leads as much as 6 in the later part of that first and second quarter, but Steph was doing Steph things to keep the Warriors afloat. And then the second half, like typical fashion, we saw that Warriors avalanche in that third quarter. And instead of just Steph going off, they did so getting second chance opportunities. And who did that? It's Kevon Looney. Put some respect on Kevon Looney's name. I mean, Loon has been a guy that's gone under the radar. I mean, he has been with the Warriors for a plethora of years, actually since 2016. Now, he's been banged up with injuries and probably forgotten in the many all-stars that they had with Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, Stephen Curry, and then all the role players with like Andre Iguodala, Sean Livingston, for example. Now that he's developed, he's been quite a great piece for their center position. I mean, he is tasked to guard a lot of people that are bigger than him. I mean, he's like a 6'9" center, but very, very strong and just knows how to position himself for rebounds. He had 3 20-rebound games in this series alone. That is something that hasn't been done in 30, 40 years in the NBA playoffs. And I just think we need to put some respect on this guy's name. I mean, him controlling the offensive glass, and he got 10 rebounds in the third quarter alone. I know he missed some free throws. Still, the points doesn't matter. The rebounds, invaluable for the Golden State Warriors. That's what happened. That was the difference in this game. They out-physicaled them. They got to every 50-50 ball, and that's what champions do. Now, not to pile on the Kings, they're a young team. I think they've exceeded expectations, but this is the Golden State Warriors moment. Steph poured on 50 in this game. I mean, he was ridiculous. Dancing everywhere, making shots, and just being a guy that was the difference maker in this game. An NBA record, mind you, for most points in a Game 7. The first ever 50-point game in a Game 7. Kevin Durant had the record 2 years ago with a 48-point performance, but that also needed overtime as well. So he did this all in regulation, pretty much ripped the heart out of Sacramento. I mean, the game, I think, was over with about 7 minutes ago. The Warriors went up by about 20 points. A lot of Kings fans were pretty quiet at that point, and I understand it's disappointing, but it gives way to a really, really good series with the LA Lakers. And how the LA Lakers got here is they eliminated the Memphis Grizzlies, and they had a 3-1 lead at one point. They didn't get the job done on the road in Memphis, but they had to come back. But this is when they simply beat the brakes off of them. LeBron is routinely taking it personal with all those comments that Dillon Brooks had between games 2 and 3, and routinely went at it, whether it was Brooks or whoever was his opposing defender. He handled business, but also Anthony Davis did so. And then we saw a very good performance from D'Angelo Russell. I mean, Russell has struggled from the postseason in his career. He had a streak of games that he shot below 40%. Very, very alarming there. In this game, he was phenomenal. In Game 6, he had 31 points, shot 12 out of 17, made a bunch of threes, and that's the D'Lo that we may not get on every night, but he's capable of that, and that's a game changer right there. Kudos to him. I think the Lakers have a lot left to do in this postseason. It's good to see that they're getting contributions from a bevy of players outside of AD, who is still very capable of taking over a series. I mean, he had a couple dominant performances, whether it was scoring, but especially the defensive end. In Game 1, he had 7 blocks, and I mean, he is the first player to have about 30 blocks in a series since Shaquille O'Neal, so that's really good company to be in. So if Anthony Davis is doing that, and now they're going up against the Golden State Warriors and Miami Heat, who shocked arguably the entire NBA world thanks to vintage playoff Jimmy appearances yet again, and it's more than just him in the bubble. He's done this again and again, and it seems that the Bucks have some issues when they are favored. Every time they've had the top seed in the Eastern Conference, they have failed to make the NBA Finals, and only one time they made the Eastern Conference Finals back in 2019. Since then, they flamed out in the conference semifinals to Miami, and then this year, as the 1 seed, the best record overall, they flame out in the first round. Yes, Giannis was hurt. You think that they are still more than Giannis. I mean, Middleton was kind of back into form. He was sort of there. Jrue Holiday had to step up, but he didn't really do so. I know he has a tough assignment really tough assignment guarding Jimmy Butler, but still, it's something that you're definitely disappointed in the Milwaukee Bucks. So, I mean, they went out in 5 games. You know, they had an opportunity, just blew 2 leads in games 4 and 5, and that was really it for them. If those go their favor, they're up 3-2 with a chance to close out in Miami for game 6. And I think a lot of this goes back to Coach Budenholzer. Coach Bud has had pretty good success in this league. He changed the culture in Atlanta and made them a okay team to being a first seeded team in 2015. He changed the culture also in Milwaukee, where they were a fringe Eastern Conference playoff team, to being one of the top 3 teams routinely in the Eastern Conference. Still, he's made some pretty poor decisions. In 2019, remember when he went up against the Toronto Raptors, he didn't adjust to Nick Nurse's wall concept, where Kawhi Leonard was the guy that was predominantly guarding Giannis's drives to the rim, and then there were numerous help defenders there just in case Giannis got by Kawhi, and there was Pascal Siakam or Marc Gasol in his way. Coach Bud didn't have an answer for that, and they lost a 2-0 series lead, lost in 6. Pretty disappointing there. The bubble, it just didn't seem like he had any answers to guard Jimmy Butler. In that series, they didn't have Jrue Holiday, but they did have Giannis, who was the Defensive Player of the Year, mind you, in 2020. Not once did he deploy Giannis on Jimmy Butler to attempt to shut him down. Next thing you know, you have the 2021 title, so Coach Bud gets a little bit of a pass. Obviously, you can't fire a coach who just won the championship. And then last season, yeah, Middleton was out, but they had a chance to close out the Boston Celtics on their home court. Didn't do so, and just haven't been able to get any additional shooting or take advantage of the moment, and this year flame out in the first round. So coaching status is definitely in doubt, and I would really think this is a good opportunity for ownership to take another look at other head coaching prospects. I think the Bucks have an opportunity still to maximize this window, because right now Middleton is a free agent. I don't know how long he'll be able to play, because he's shown signs of being on the downswing of his career. Jrue Holiday has expressed interest of retiring once his contract finishes in 2 seasons. Giannis isn't getting any younger. Brook Lopez isn't getting any younger. This core of the Milwaukee Bucks is still an elite team, but with the Celtics still there, they're very young. I mean, compared to the Bucks, they're a lot younger than them. So I think also the Celtics just have more firepower than the Milwaukee Bucks, and if it wasn't thanks to the superstardom that is Giannis Antetokounmpo, I think the Boston Celtics would be easily runaway favorites on a yearly basis in the Eastern Conference. The Bucks have some work to do. I think they have to make some tweaks in the roster and maybe take a look at that head coaching gig. To preview the Knicks and the Miami Heat series, so game 1 is already in the book, so it's not really as much of a preview, but it's more just to think of the future outlook on the series. Game 1 was taken by Miami, so they've already stolen the game. Now, for note, Randall did not play in game 1 because of an ankle injury that he suffered in game 5 back in that first round matchup against Cleveland, so they were without their second best player. I still think they played very well. They controlled most of this game, but then in the third quarter, Jimmy and the Heat kind of changed gears, and it seemed the Knicks couldn't really recover from that. I'd hope that they were able to make some adjustments in game 2 and Randall would return. And also for the Miami Heat, unfortunately for them, Jimmy Butler rolled his ankle, so not sure how his status is going to change for game 2. He's going to play, there's no doubt about that, but just don't know how limited that ankle injury will make him, because that's going to impact his ability to make jumpers, cuts to the rim, those explosive moves that he relies on. I think that's just something to keep an eye out for. Injuries are very much a big thing in this postseason so far, so we'll see if that changes the outlook on this series. But I think just the Heat winning this game already puts them in the driver's seat. They just have the veteran experience. They've made the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Jimmy Butler has taken the team all the way to the finals a few years ago. The Knicks are happy to be here. I think they have the better team. I would just take the better player and the better coach in Eric Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler with the Miami Heat. So I'll pick the Miami Heat to advance in 6 games. And we already have the series started with the Phoenix Suns and the Denver Nuggets. Now the Suns, I've talked about before how I have questions about their depth. Now, they definitely showed signs against the LA Clippers. Despite them winning in 5 games, the Clippers are obviously the deeper team. Now, obviously, the Clippers are the deeper team, and that depth was tested after Kawhi got knocked out. It's hard to say that the Suns were truly tested in that series. I think this Nuggets team is definitely different. Players not named Booker or Kevin Durant I don't think are as reliable to score even 17 points. DeAndre Ayton maybe can give you 17 points, but it's not going to be consistent. So where's the scoring going to come from for the Phoenix Suns? That is my question. Unless those two go off for at least 30, 40 points, it's going to be hard to find extra scoring for the Phoenix Suns. In game 1, we saw that with the Denver Nuggets. 5 players, all 5 starters were in double figures for the Denver Nuggets. And then you add in Bruce Brown's contributions off the bench with 14 points there. That's a huge difference in production. That is 6 players in double figures, and 34 of them came from Jamal Murray, who many people said we weren't sure if he's the same Jamal Murray after coming off of an 18-month layover with that ACL injury. He's doing just fine. He's taken up an extra notch in this postseason. I think really he was just trying to get his legs underneath him for the regular season, and now he's changed a different gear in the postseason. He can be the leading scorer of this Nuggets team. That's fine. Nikola Jokic doesn't need to do so. He impacts the game in many other different ways other than scoring. Don't forget that. He rebounds, he assists, and if he's doing that and Jamal Murray is going off against whoever is guarding him, whether it be Booker or Okogie, whoever it may be, that's going to be a recipe for success for the Denver Nuggets. And now they're already up 1-0. I do expect the Phoenix Suns to get a road game or maybe later in this matchup, but for right now it's definitely advantage Nuggets. We'll see what happens there, but I think right now I'll take the Denver Nuggets in 7 games. And then quickly, I wanted to talk about the English Premier League. We had probably the biggest match day of the entire 2022-2023 season, with Arsenal taking on Manchester City, and this is pretty much for the title. Now, Arsenal has been in terrible form recently. They've drawn 3 consecutive matches, dropped a ton of points, while City slowly has been chipping away. Now, they have been behind in terms of games played because of their other commitments to the FA Cup, the Champions League as well, so they are still a little bit behind there in terms of games played, but in terms of points, they're right there. And in this matchup, clearly outclass Arsenal, where they won 4-1, a brace from Kevin De Bruyne, who is still a masterful player in the midfield. The biggest thing that they do is they usually stretch people from the outside on the wings. This time they went right up the middle and just simply outran the back line of the Arsenal Gunners, and we saw that routinely with De Bruyne, and then that set up a nice goal just before halftime with John Stones, and that was pretty much the backbreaker. If you're down 1-0 at halftime, it's okay, it's manageable, but 2-0, especially just before halftime when you could have had gotten away with it, that's a backbreaker right there. So that really deflated the Arsenal Gunners at that point. Bruyne promptly after halftime made it 3-0. Of course, Haaland broke the record in this game, and he set the record for most goals in the English Premier League season, breaking Mo Salah's record from a few seasons ago. To do this in your first year in the Premier League is truly astounding. Credit to him. I mean, he is benefiting obviously from the Pep Guardiola system, but he is obviously a very talented player, and City is lucky to have him because he's been that missing piece, I think, in this puzzle for them to not only just get another Premier League title, but to win the Champions League title. Despite their other commitments, Haaland has been doing everything he can to be part of this treble, and I think Man City will be able to coast now to the Premier League title. Now they have to lock up the FA Cup as well. I think they'll do so, and I expect them to be in competition with Real Madrid. As long as they beat Real Madrid in the semifinals of the Champions League, I think they complete the treble and win the Champions League as well. Whew. So I told you it was going to be a really loaded episode for you guys today. It was the draft, it was Premier League, it was the NBA playoffs. But thank you everybody for tuning in. If you haven't done so already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, take a look at our Instagram and TikTok pages. For my Spotify listeners, give us a 5-star review. And until next time, as always, stay safe.